Okay, so we're going to start off with the very basics of what the Nord Stage 4 is as a keyboard. The model I have right here, right now, is the Compact 73. And this is just unweighted version. There's three versions. You have the weighted version that's 73 keys. You have the 88 key. Most places, of course, are probably going to have the 88, but I like this model because it's flyable. And as a professional musician, that's helpful. We basically have a total of three major synth sections, and then we have an effects section. And um, if you've used the Nord Stage 3 or the 2, you're going to be a little bit familiar with this, but I'll go over it quickly. You have the organ section, you have a piano section, and you have a synthesizer section. And then the effects section is over here. Now, the big difference between the Nord Stage 3 and the Nord Stage 4 is they've added the ability to bundle sections together. So what that means is you're able to create a preset inside the synth section that includes the effects section. And you can do that for three different layers here. Each one of these gray buttons indicates a layer. So you have three synthesizers here that I can tap through, two different pianos, and then an organ. And again, all of those have dedicated effects that you can turn on and off. The other thing that this allows you to do is you have two different kinds of presets. You have patches, which are just general things where you can load a entire board. So you're loading everything that comes here. So when I click through this, all of these are jumping as I go to new collections. That's called a patch. The preset library is individual modules, and you can load them one at a time in here. So what this means is, like, for instance, if I wanted to build my own patch, I can come over to hold down Shift, hit organ, and this gives me all of the different organs that I have. So for instance, I can scroll through here, and not only is this changing the sound that's loaded in here, this is also changing all the effects over here. Now with organs, there's not a lot that I've included here, but you do have that ability to change. And that includes the piano section and the synth section. And this is just hugely revolutionary because all of a sudden, in the past, when I was designing the worship collection, I had to just build in general effects that were across the whole thing. This one, I can build an effect for every individual sound. So let me give you a quick example here, just for giggles. Let's go to a blank setup here. Let's say that I wanted to put in a grand piano. Let's do a pad, and then I want something like an arpeggio. So let me go ahead and start off here. So I'm going to hold Shift, click on the piano, and then there's a whole bunch of presets that Nord has in here, which are great. You can blend them with a worship collection. It's not going to be a problem. The only thing to watch is it also has volume here as well, which means if your volume, if you have everything gained down, which I do across here, so you have room to move stuff up or down, most of these are going to be all the way at the top. So you're just going to want to put it down like that. So I'm going to look for WC, WC Worship Collection. That will be on every patch that I make. So we have here, let's do just a grand piano. When I'm done, I don't have to hit enter or anything. I just hit Shift again to exit. And I have my, just a very basic piano. Great. That's what I want. Then I want to add let's add in a synthesizer. So I'm going to come over here and we're going to get a pad, hold Shift, Synth, and I'm going to load up a pad. And again, Nord has some really good ones. That sounds great. But watch some of these amazing pads. If I'm, boy, that sounded so arrogant. I didn't mean it to be. Listen to some of this awesome thing. This is just a stock saw pad that I built. Now, this thing has a dedicated reverb over here in the corner. We've got some EQ going on. I've got some unison. And if I wanted to, I could even dress it up more. I have you can turn on each individual section. I'll talk about that in a second. But let's go ahead and fire this up. And by the way, I'm controlling this sweeping in and out with my foot. I'm using a foot pedal. You can easily use a modulation wheel to get the same effect. But yeah, it's there for you if you want it. So you can see really quickly, I can go through and audition different sounds as well without having to change all these presets because they change for me. So I kind of like that one. Let's leave that. So now I've got a piano, a synth, with each one of them has their own unique effect. The cool thing about this is you can always tell what is selected based on the orange, or well, it's kind of a yellowish orange light here. So if this is yellowish orange, let's just call it orange, it's going to show the effect that's applied to this one. When I tap one of these, it changes. So I'll do it again. You can see it changes. You can also select in this new focus area which one you want to control or which one you want to see the effects of. Now, in the Nord Stage 3, they had a button down here called Panel A, Panel B. I used the crap out of that. I used it all the time. Would hold Shift, you could do these combinations. They've gotten rid of that. I don't know how I feel about it, but they have created a new ability where you have a layer scene 2, and it's right here. And when you tap it, it selects a second. It basically allows you to turn on and off any combination of sections you want. I think this is an advantage. I'm not sure. Either way, I've worked around it. So we wanted to have that piano, we wanted a pad, and we wanted the arpeggiator, like something kind of moving there. So if I'm building a worship set, I'm going to usually start off with some sort of piano. And I'm going to sweep in that saw pad or pulse pad, whatever I want to do. And then at a chorus, I'm going to want to suddenly switch to a lot more movement. To do that, you hit the layer scene 2. So the layer scene 2, I'm just going to tap it. And right now, nothing really changes except this turns off because I haven't set anything to change. So on this one, I'm going to want to turn each one of these sections on. So I'm going to turn this one. To add additional ones, this was a little tricky for me to figure out. You hold them down like this, or you could just use 3 fingers. You can also turn them off that way, like that. You can tab through like this, just by tapping individual ones. It's a little different than it has been in the past, and that's okay. Just takes some getting used to. These levels are too high, so I'm going to turn on the synth A and synth B, and I'm going to bring the level down on synth C, actually. So now let's select a preset to go on here. So I'm going to do that. It's automatically flashing here, and that means that this synth, anything I'm changing here is going to be there. Now, again, it's very important you hold down Shift, Synth. Otherwise, if you just hit up here, it's going to load a whole bunch of sounds all together, and we want to do them individually. So we're going to go through here. We'll scroll through. There's 2 ways of finding them. I can just scroll. All of my presets are going to be together. Or I can see a search by category. To do that, I just hold down this little button here. It's the number 3 on a program. And we're looking for an arpeggiator. So sequence ARP, that's probably it. I'm let go. Every single thing that I've built, I've categorized as well. So it's all here. So let's go through a few here. Again, we're also have access to all of Nord's built-in sounds as well, so we can go back and forth. The only reason I prefer mine is because I have things mapped identically with that mod wheel. So that's the only thing you lose if you use Nord's built-in stuff. So let's scroll to the end here. WC, that's mine. Let's see what that sounds like. So that's kind of a pulsing pad. We're looking for more of a arpeggiator. So let's go over here. It'll say ARP. At the very end, I've also named a kind. That's great. Let's find something else here. Maybe a trancey sort of thing. That's kind of more where I'm at. So once I do that, don't have to hit anything. I just hit exit. It's loaded there. So now we can just go through, see what we're doing just by tapping on each section. So now we have section A and section C under the synth activated when we're on layer 2. Now, we can also do multiple layers on each one of these sections if we wanted to. So for instance, I could do the same thing. I hold down 1 to turn it off, tap it, tap another one. I could add another piano here. You can kind of build whatever you want. Most of the presets that I have are going to have a simple layer scene 1, and then when you tap the layer button, you're going to get a more complex second scene, and I'll show you that in just a second. But for starters, we now can switch quickly between those two sounds. So let's try it here. We'll start off with layer 1. There we go. Not perfect, but definitely an example of what you can do with this. Now, let's talk a little bit about the pack before we go in depth on each individual section. So for the worship collection, there are a total of 118 presets. Or I'm sorry, 118 patches here. And I've tried to cover every possible scenario I could think of in a worship collection or in a worship scenario. And I play worship at least 100, 200 times a year. It's crazy to think it's that much. And I try to incorporate anything that I run into on a fairly regular basis. Now, of course, there's going to be things I have here that you're going to run into. You'll need a program. But for the, I'd say 99% of the time, you're going to be able to cover it with a preset. To see it in a list view, I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to just click this one time. And the way this is structured is there are 10 empty slots here on H88, 87, 86, and so on. And those 10 slots are designed for you to be able to place your sounds that you need for a service or a worship night in those spots. And the way that I usually do it, you don't have to do it this way, but I usually just pick one sound or one patch per song, and that makes it really easy to manage them, and you can rename them. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Before I go any further, though, let's just talk about it. I've included I kind of went back and forth on this because I wasn't sure if it was best to come up with creative names for stuff or it was best to be more descriptive, and I ended up being more descriptive because when I'm scrolling quickly, I don't want to have to guess at what something is. So what I've done is I've put the name of the piano here first. So W grand is white grand, and then the name of the first pad that I'm using in this. So in this case, it's actually a square pad that I've got going on over here. And you can just scroll through and get a really quick idea of what each one is going to be. So like for instance, a B upright is going to be an upright piano. If I scroll through some more, EP7 electric piano, and then it also tells the pad kind. And again, the pad's a little hard to describe because I'm combining multiple layers, but that's the gist of it. So let's go back over here. I'm holding Shift, clicking, scroll through, and I'll give you an example. This is the first one in the list. Starts off, and I'll show you, again, I'm going to be using scene 1 or layer 1 here, and then tapping layer 2 when I get to like a chorus. And I'm making this all up. So here we go. And you kind of get the idea of that there's a lot of movement that you can do there. Um, and you can quickly switch with that layer scene mode in order to get that movement. Again, if you don't have it, I highly recommend using an expression pedal because that's going to free up your hands to be able to play and not jump over here to try to manipulate a wheel. But that said, it's there if you need it. If that's your preferred way, a lot of guys love that, and girls. So let's go through here real quick. I'm just going to very quickly talk you through the number of presets we have. We've got a grand pianos here, and I'll do this here so it's a little easier to read. We've got lots of grand pianos because, again, you're going to be spending more than probably 50% of your time playing piano in a worship setting, unless you're playing a keys 2 roll, and the other 50% is kind of set up for a keys 2 roll. So you've got just a lot of each one's going to have kind of its own unique flavor. Again, just lots of grand, an electric grand, CP70, I think. Kind of get the idea, warts and all. And it just kind of goes through in order here. Then you'll switch to upright pianos. They got some great upright pianos in here, like. So not a lot of movement there, but that's okay. Each one has different layers here. So we got like you get the feel. Strikes. Lots of strikes going on there. Also, these have all been level matched, so they should fire within about 5 dB of each other, meaning that your sound guy is going to love you because he's not going to be having to ride the fader every time you make a switch in the patches. So we'll keep going here. Just a nice mellow. This would be like... You kind of get the idea. And then we move here into a different combinations other than pads. So again, most of the time, you're probably going to be doing pads with a piano most of the time. That said, there's a whole wide variety. We have accordions with pianos. Nice feel there. We've got a black upright with a piano. With an accordion. And then we move into our electric pianos. These have kind of fallen out of fashion in the last few years, but I try to kind of modernize some of them. So we've got these nice... So you got a lot of movement there, something that you can quickly hit. This strike piano is a combination of a piano sound and then like a guitar strike, which I rolled off. And by the way, this whole collection only uses internal sounds, meaning that you are only going to need to download some patches, and all of the internal sounds have just been torn apart and used to death. So nice little thing there. Again, I've also tried to come up with patches that are contingency patches, so things that you might, if like a guitar player is sick, for instance, and or maybe he just doesn't show up. Sometimes they do that. Sometimes keyboard players do that. You've got a patch you could play that would kind of fill that same sonic space without being a guitar. So this one's an electric piano with a guitar pad. So again, you can tell it's clearly not a guitar, but it fills that same sort of washy spot that guitars can sometimes fill. So we've got that. You've got like a little edgy thing, edge as in U2. So nice fun little thing going on there. You could turn off a section too if you want. Hit the layer button, the whole 9 yards. Yeah, let's keep on going. There's a lot to cover here. This is one of my favorites though. It's an electric piano with a spring reverb. So you can get kind of that nice. It's really fun. Not sure how worshipy it is, but maybe for like a rootsy kind of night, that might be a good option. Then we start getting into some really gritty sounding stuff. So you got like this. A lot of space there. A lot of space. Wurlitzers. And again, I'm going to try and move quickly here so you don't get bored. This sound has kind of come back lately. If you want, of course, you can always adjust things, like maybe you want it to kind of sit further back. I could turn up the reverb. Again, you get the feel. This has a ton of movement. Go through each section, I'll explain what a lot of this does. Just trying to give you the bird's eye view. Some like DX7, like if you're going for that classic sound or the gospel sound, that'll kind of get you there. We got again another classic there. Then we get into grand pianos and organs. So growing up in my grandmother's church, they had a grand piano player, they had a organ player, and those two were in sync. They were so good. The way that the limitation, of course, of not having two keyboard players on stage a lot of times is you're asked to do both. Well, I figured out a way that you can do both. I've set the expression pedal so that it's all the way back. So when I'm at 0, the only thing you hear is the piano. But then you can sweep in the organ as you go, or you could use the mod wheel. And you got it. It's right there. So there's a whole bunch of presets for that. We've got different grand pianos. If you go to even a more traditional church, that's going to be very, very helpful. And same here. It takes a little while to get used to that expression pedal, but man, it can make a big difference in your playing. Just a nice feel. So you get the idea. And then we go into just the organs. So if you're just playing organ, you get the idea. And again, always layer in second scene for a completely different feel. And I've given you about 10 different presets that kind of cover pretty much everything. We'll get into how to manipulate the organ here in a minute. And then we go into traditional church. So if you're play in a very traditional church, this is going to be very helpful. Really good organ sounds here, that like pipe organ sounds. You get the idea. It's just fun to play around with that. Of course, we got the really fun there. Big organ. Now, once we've moved past this, I've given a bunch of different synthesizer sections. I'll go on a tangent for a second. A lot of people, I see them, they have like 4 keyboards on stage, 5 keyboards on stage. That's fun. I play with a bunch of artists where I'm having a bunch of keyboards on stage, and I do it because it's fun, not because I need it. When you have the Nord Stage 3 or the 4, you can 100% get almost every single keyboard sound you're going to need in a worship setting out of just this board. And to show that, I'm just going to play through some of these key sounds. So the first one is they've added a new pumping feature, which I really like. It basically just pumps and drops. It imitates something called side chaining that a lot of producers use, and it just reduces the volume every quarter note. So it's bump, 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 or bump, 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 whatever tempo you have. And you can set the tempo just by tapping right up here. We'll get to that in a minute, but it goes like this. That pump, it just sounds really good. Again, there's a lot of pulse here. Each one of those will be called pulse. So you get the idea. Some really nice key sound, and it's only possible because I'm able to go so in depth with this layer effects section. Like, you can really get pretty much any sound you need. Tons of movement there. Then we get into arpeggios. And again, I set the tempo. 2, 3, 4. And that tempo is stored with each individual patch. Very helpful. Then we got, some auxiliary things. Also, I have spent literally dozens of hours programming not just the sounds here, but programming every single thing in every single patch. Meaning, You can literally randomly turn things on and it's probably going to sound okay. And this is a great example of it. So just got a very basic vibraphone. Let's just start hitting things on, turning them on. So turn on this. Nice little pad. Put the next one in. A little string. I got this awesome little synth section right there without having to do anything. Same with the effects section. If I come over here, turn this on, I added an auto pan back and forth. Let's turn on the chorus. This part is already on, but if I want to like add distortion, it's right there. It's super simple. Of delay. Very just subtle. But right there, turn on the compressor. Turn on. So beforehand, after. And again, that's all pre-programmed for every single piano, every single synth section. Everything is done that way. So it makes it really simple. If you are trying to get more out of a sound, it's already been done for you. And then, of course, you can always just add your own thing and store it by hitting the red store button, and you'll have your own sound. So we got some leads. And then I've worked really, really hard on these modern strings. And the modern strings and the strings section in general, I feel like is some of the best sounding strings I've ever heard in a string library because it combines two really good string sounds. I've got, let me just turn these off for a second. I've got a just a regular attack. So not a lot of punch at the beginning, it's legato, but then I've included a staccato or marcato sort of pluck that comes in. And when you combine these together, and then you do a lot of programming with getting the frequencies to sweep in correctly, listen to how cool this sounds. And if that doesn't impress your worship leader, I don't know what's going to do it. So again, a lot of that is being used by me controlling the expression pedal. And I've gotten good at this over time. I could do the same thing just by moving the mod wheel, but this will get you about 90% of the way. Same for each one of those. I've used that same approach. So just so much realism there. And it's true of each one of these. We've got small section strings. This is one of my favorites, kind of a vintage sound. It's so fun. I could play that for hours. So much fun to play through. Pizzicato strings. Bet you might know that one if you're of a certain age. Then we go into grand pianos with a mellotron. And this is fun. This is a little vintage. I'm noticing this works really well if you have tracks heavy sections. So like if you have a lot of synthesizers going on and you don't want to play a pad, this is a really good option. Because usually, frequency-wise, synth pads are a little higher, and this is a little bit more mid-rangey. So that kind of fits well. And a couple different ones. This is a string machine. And then we have get into orchestral sounds. So this is a orchestra. So you can really create an awesome intro there. Accordion. Gospel brass. I'm not a gospel player, but I like to pretend. Orchestral brass. Very similar, but has a little bit different programming. Glockenspiel. Choir. So fun. Then, again, another problem-solving patch. Acoustic guitar. Maybe you don't have it, and you need to play Time of Your Life by Green Day. I don't know. So, and you got a little bit of sweep here. I mean, it's not going to fool anybody, but in a mix, if you're going... it's going to fill that same texture, which is, you know, potentially going to solve a problem. On layer A, or I'm sorry, on layer 2, you've got a resonator guitar. And again, you probably will never need this patch, but you might need it in a pinch. Same with this one, a 12 string. And a banjo over here in the upper section. And by the way, there's a few things here that I'm still going to have to tweak. We're working on a beta version of this, but the pack you have will be a little more ironed out. Nylon guitar. Might be nice for Christmas. Worship guitar, again, not designed to replace a guitar player, but in a pinch, you can fill that space. My guitar player friends would probably cringe at that, but that's okay. Harp. Bass. Again, problem solver. You might need to hold down that low end. Another bass. Got a nice thump there. Upright bass. And then Christmas, you're doing a jazz set, the upright bass player cancels. Here you go. So you can do like... you can tell it's out of Christmas season. I'm pretty bad at that. We got an FM bass. If you ever need to do a synth bass part, again, you might never need that. Sub bass. If you're listening with subwoofers, this would rattle them. And then a white noise sweep, which I'm sweeping in with my foot. And that's a really nice transition thing if you need it. Again, you might never need this. This is why these are at the end of these packs. And then a metronome, a click. So this thing, if I turn on the keyboard hold, it's a never-ending metronome. With, if I hit layer, it adds in a eighth note section. So we're doing quarter notes, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. And just to turn it off, I can just hit keyboard hold again to turn it off. And that's just a handy little function thing. Then we all need practice. I know I do. And I created a piano sound, just a real basic one down here, and then a click up here. And now I can practice and not have to have a separate click sound. And that is it. That is all the different patches that you're going to have throughout all of this thing. Now, we've worked backwards just a little bit here. Let's go ahead and talk about how each section works. You've gotten to hear the examples of how it works. Let's just practice talking about each section. So first thing we're going to do, left to right. On the left here, we have the volume. That'll control the volume of everything across the board. You can't set this. You just kind of have to like leave it where it's at. And then you adjust the individual sections' volumes using these little knobs right here. Or I'm sorry, sliders right here. That's changed from the Nord Stage 3. It used to be like a little circle thing. I think I like these sliders better. They feel really good. So you've got the first section is the organ section. The organ section is going to have this really cool A-B focus that we talked about before, where you can set two different sounds and you can set them here just by tapping back and forth, or you can blend them together and you can control which combination using the layer section like we talked about. So the organ section itself, we've got the organ and then we have the rotary speaker. And the rotary speaker is right over here. It contains, it basically is the Leslie simulator. I've got a Leslie in my studio. It's a giant box that has a rotating speaker inside that creates this classic sound. And as soon as you hear it, you'll be like, oh, I know what that is. So just one bar here, you can hear it. Let's turn this up. If I turn this off, this is what it sounds like. Not at all like an organ. It sounds like a sine wave. If I turn the organ rotary speaker on, you can hear a simulation of that speaker just spinning. And then if I adjust it using the slow, fast button down here, the speaker actually spins faster, and it's really cool. So that's the rotary. Without that, the organ doesn't sound like a B3 organ, at least in my opinion. And then we're going to go over into this section very quickly. I'm just going to tell you what you need to know for a worship scenario. I'm not going to explain in depth how organs work or pianos or synths or any of that. The biggest thing you're going to want to use are these drawbars here. That's what they call these things here. Each one of these pulls out a tone. So when I don't have this down, when I have them all up like this, nothing comes through, which is kind of bizarre. Then it introduces different, it was trying to emulate essentially an organ, like a big pipe organ, and it introduces tone wheels or tones one at a time in intervals. This first one's a fifth, then an octave, then a fifth, octave, third, fifth, octave. And all together, our ear blends them all together and does not hear those individuals. It just hears the different harmonics. And what this allows us to do is create these really cool changes. So you can get this really dark tone by just bringing out a few, or you can bring a little bit of brightness at the top. You hear how drastic that sound can shift. And honestly, I didn't grow up with these. I grew up with a module, a little organ module that had all the sounds pre-programmed in, and I had no way to adjust it. So I'm not used to this. I had to learn it once I got to Nashville. What I'm saying that for is you don't have to know how this works, because all my presets let you know. But here's the fun part. You can literally just grab stuff. and come up with your own sounds. It's so much fun. So I'd highly encourage you to just play around with it and see what you like. And then if you don't like it and you need to get it returned, you just literally switch back, like switch away from your patch and switch back to it, and it'll recall the default. So there's no harm, no foul. There's several different modes here. The main one we're going to be using is the B3. There's also like a Vox for FISA. I think that's how you say it. That's the classic sound. A pipe organ, second pipe organ, and then a B3 bass, which you're almost never going to use. And the main thing that you're going to want to worry about is just the B3 sound. And then the only other thing that you can add, there's two other sections. You have a vibrato, you have a percussion. Those two parts are going to turn on a chorus sort of sound. Adds a little bit of movement, even in slow, which some people really like. Percussion adds a little like thunk at the beginning of your sound. If I really reduce the drawbars, you can hear it better. You hear that? And those just add different elements. Again, a lot of times I just leave it off because honestly, most of the time you just are looking for a pad. You don't want much of a attack. And that's it. That's the organ. Let's move on to the piano. Piano section here allows me to basically just simulate a grand piano or any combination of anything where you either strike or pluck, in the case of a clavinet, a instrument. Now there's a few exceptions. Of course, there's a digital section where we have the DX7 and a whole bunch of those kind of things. But for the most part, that's it. Real quickly, to turn on and off a section, I don't think I said this before, you can literally hit the on or off button at the top. I'm going to do that on the piano and turn off the organ. There we go. And there's my piano. Again, adjust it with the volume. Also, hidden feature, you probably don't need this, and I have not used it in this pack, but if you hold shift, you can adjust the panning on the synth section. I thought you could do it on the piano, but apparently it's just the synth section. So I got a piano sound. Really quickly, the way to change the piano that you want is just by moving this button here. And you can also hold shift. There's always a secondary function listed down below. And I can literally just scroll through here, see whatever I want, hit shift again or exit to get out of there. And then I can tab through all of my individual raw sounds. These are not presets. Again, to load a preset, you hold shift, tap on the preset, and that will allow you to load presets. But this is the way to manually manipulate it. So they've got all the sounds. Clavinet. I've not used clavinet in this because I've never heard a clav used in worship. That probably needs to change. Somebody needs to do it. Digital, ballad. And you can just get pretty much whatever you want, including a few things like marimba and xylophone. Okay, so we got all that set. Then let's just switch it back over here to grand piano, and I'm going to go to my favorite, which is the first one here, the white grand. And then there's a couple things you can adjust based on your keyboard and your playing habits. First is your touch. I like my touch to be a little heavy. And what I mean by that is you have to strike the key a little bit harder in order to get sound out of it. So for instance, I'm going to do a velocity gain here, so I'll just go. Let me turn that down. It's clipping a little. That's heavy. Same velocity or as close as I can get it. It jumps to the loudest section faster. Light. You can hear how the quietest notes are essentially easier or harder to strike. So I like to do the heavy because it gives, to me, it gives me the biggest range. And that's what most of these are set at, but you can quickly shift that just by tapping, depending on what you want. Dynamic compression. This is brand new to the Nord Stage 4. Dynamic compression allows you to essentially compress how soft the softest sounds are and how loud the loudest sounds are. So let me go back to heavy here. Here's with no compression. Here's with one. And it's probably hard to tell, but you can hear it just starting to narrow just a little bit. Again, I've left this off because I personally don't need that. And then there's a couple adjustments here. The big one is you can brighten a sound or soften a sound inside here without using an effect, which is really handy. This was introduced in the Nord Stage 3, I believe, and it was very handy there. It's still handy because it saves you from having to do your EQ. So, turn that up again. So you can hear the highs have been rolled off just a little. Mids, sounds like I'm playing through a phone a little bit more. Brights, this is the one I like. Maybe because I don't know, maybe I have hearing loss in the bright section, but to me it just really breathes on most of the pianos. So the bright is my favorite. There's also two other modes for the electric pianos, dynamics. And again, you may not ever, or you never have to use that unless you want to, but it's there for you. And that's pretty much the important things to know about the piano section. There's a few other things like you can adjust let's see here. You can adjust the release. You can set string resonance, which allows you to essentially have like some overtone string resonance that simulates the interactions of the physics inside of a grand piano or an upright piano. But yeah, that's about it. The only other thing that I have not mentioned yet is you also in each one of these sections have an octave shift button. This is so important because you can quickly adjust the pitch. It only goes up or down one octave, but it's very helpful. The synth section can go up or down, I think, 2 or maybe 3. So yeah, that's everything you need to know about the piano. Let's move on to the middle section. This section, even after about a month of having this keyboard and working on it for dozens and dozens of hours, if not hundreds of hours, I still don't know it as well as I feel like I would like to. Basically, we'll start at the top here. The morph sign is essentially any time you want to control something with either the mod wheel, aftertouch, which is when you press into a keyboard like after you strike it, or the control pedal, which is what I'm using. This will light up, and so if I turn on this section, and I can easily assign something to be adjusted. So for instance, if I want to have the control pedal sweep the frequency, I hold down here, and I move the knob. And now, I'm sweeping it up. And that turns green. Same with aftertouch. Let's do that as well. I'm going to do it. Let's pick something that's really obvious to see. I'm going to adjust this. So I'm going to go here and adjust it here. And now it's affecting that. To remove it, all I have to do is just wiggle it to the point where it grays out the bottom, and there I go. It's gone. And the cool thing about the Nord Stage 3 and 4 that very few people talk about is you can do this for, I think it's like 40 some or 50 some presets here in any combination you want. which makes this essentially, if you are good at your expression pedal, an incredibly expressive keyboard. Um, and I have everything on mine pre-mapped to be the control pedal will control the frequency and control the organ. And I've kind of kept it basic, but you could go crazy with this if you wanted to. So that's the morphous sine. The split, if you hold this down, you can set your split point, which allows you to zone each one of these into sections. And it also allows you to adjust a fade. So you could have a sound kind of taper off as you go down. To do that, you just can navigate using this button here and then these buttons down below. And this kind of gets you around it. So like right now I have 2 zones set. Let's turn off one of those zones. So I have just one in the middle. Let's go here, and I'm going to set that by adjusting this. And you can see this light tracking along here to let me know. And I haven't done a lot of splits in this collection, but you could easily take several presets and split them and layer them if you want and create really cool custom sounds for your specific needs. So that's the split section. Then I can also, if I adjust this, go up to the master clock and just tap this in. 3, 4, and that's going to give me the beat per minute. And again, that's saved. I can see it if I hold down Shift, tap. Whoop, I'm sorry. This is a new feature. I think you hold it down. Yep, hold it down. And this will allow me to see what the tempo is, and I can manually dial it in as well. Very handy. Transpose, I can turn it on. I can hold it down to see what it is. This transpose is not global. It doesn't change it for every single patch. It's specific to just the patch you're on. Very, very handy, in my opinion, so you don't, because hopefully you're not having to transpose every patch, but once in a while we all get in a bind. We all need to have that changed. So that's where you do it. It saves with the patch. Very handy. The program view. This one just changes what you see. I found it kind of a weird button. This is new. I'm not sure what to think about it. A lot of things here are just like I don't really know how to feel about this. Then we have another thing called section edit. I have not figured out what that's all about. The copy and paste though, this is really handy. If I want to copy, say, the piano, I could go Shift, copy. Oh, sorry. And again, I'm not real fast. Copy piano A, and this is going to include its effects section. I could then tap on piano B, Shift, and then the paste option, you just simply hit this button again, and it would paste it. And I'm going to go paste, and then tap paste. And there we go. I have the same piano with a different volume. On both. Very handy. Then down here we have all of our systems menus. I'm going to show you, there's a lot here, but not too much, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's a contradiction there. So to access any of these program settings, for starters, you can also select your individual patches just by here in banks of 8, which is handy. So like, for instance, if you have a Sunday, and let's say you save your patches to 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are maybe here, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, in that bank that I have left open for you. You could then just tap through individual sounds like this. Very handy. Or you could page using this button, which means you go in banks of 8. That's again changed. I think it was banks of, let's see here, 5 in the Nord Stage 3. So a little bit more there. If you want to access the submenus, unfortunately with Nord, there's very little in the submenus you're ever going to have to use. But there's a couple things you'll want to do. You hold Shift, and the first one is System. System is going to start you off. You have 4 pages of 1 or 2 choices, which I love. I have a keyboard from another manufacturer here. I counted the other day, there were 16 layers of submenus in that one. This one has 4. So it's quite quite sprite. So memory protect, on or off. If you leave it on, it's going to keep you from saving your preset. I leave it off unless you have somebody who doesn't know keyboards very well and you don't want them to mess something up. You just leave it on then. If I go to the next one, it says a global transpose if you want. Again, I don't recommend it, but some people need it. So you can tune it. I don't know why you'd want to do an alternate tuning most of the time, unless you're really into experimental tunings. I can adjust that up or down. It's nice. It gives you sense as well. And then an OS. So very simple. That's the system page. Let's go to the next one. We go to sound, volume level. This allows you to essentially adjust the level of all of the volumes here at the same time. Handy if you're trying to like level match among multiple patches. I've used this a few times. Piano noise. This is pretty much a moot point unless you have the piano pedal that they have included, because that's the only one that counts, so ignore that. Piano string resonance. That's that button I told you about, that the string resonance that's there. You can adjust it or decrease it. Organ keyboard trigger. I like to set it high so that you can trigger your organ really quickly, but some people like to trigger it low. You can set the type of tone wheel. Honestly, this one I don't think makes that much of a difference in this Nord Stage 4. Here's the two differences. Versus a little more high end. I don't think there's much of a difference. Click level, normal, that's the key hitting sound. To me, it's kind of loud. I wish they'd give a soft version. Maybe they will later. You can do a close miking or a far away, which just captures a little more room. Honestly, again, it's like very, very, I'm not sure there's much of a difference. Rotor speed, you can set that. Horn speed, again, these are all like things you don't necessarily need to tweak. I messed around with them. I didn't find anything that I thought was crazy. Now, next one, shift, organize. This allows you to quickly grab anything and move it wherever you want. So if I come up here and I'm trying to build a set, I just hit shift, organize. I find a patch I want. Maybe I need that one again. Hit move, drag it here, let go, and it would save it there. I'm going to go ahead and put it back where it was. I think it was here. And I could also undo it. And that's a quick way to build a set or reorganize a set. So that's very helpful. Auxiliary keyboard, this just allows you to basically plug in a keyboard to the MIDI ins and control it. You probably are not doing that. That's a little bit beyond the scope of what we're talking about here. And then we've got outputs. This is important. For outputs, they've completely redone the way that this is set up. There are basically two sets of outputs here. We have an out 1 and 2, out 3 and 4. You can run them all individual as mono individuals outs. You can run them as stereo outs. It's so handy. The advantage of this is if, for instance, you're playing and your sound engineer's like, hey, your pads are, I'd like to be able to mix that separate. You can set that so that it goes out 3 and 4. Very, very helpful. So if I want to do that, I can come over here to sub 1 and set it for 3 and 4. Main is 1 and 2. Then on the next page, we can go here and say our organ output bus. We're going to leave that on the main. That's totally fine. Then we're going to go to piano. It stays on the main. Totally fine. Synth. We're going to change this. We're going to put it to, let's see, I don't remember what it was called. Sub 1. So we're going to put it on sub 1. Same with, and you can do this on an individual basis. So on each one of these sounds. So sub 1 and sub 1. And now, even though this is on, you're not hearing it because it's coming out of 3 and 4. This is so freaking helpful. I wish this had been here a long time ago. You could do it with the old ones, but it was just a lot harder to do and you couldn't do it as elegantly as this is done. So that's one way to do it. For your pedal, this is another one that's important. You can set here what kind of control pedal you want. So I have an FC7 plugged in. They have a few profiles here. I go between the FC7 and I have another one that's like a FATAR or FATAR. I'm not sure how you say it. So we'll go back to that one. They cover multiple ones. Again, most workstations don't. Very glad they do. They also have a swell pedal input if you want to just control the organ. That's there for you. They have a sustain pedal. So we all know that feeling of plugging in our piano and hitting a note and it just holds. We're like, wait a minute, why is it holding? And it's the sustain pedal. It's working in reverse. So you can change that here. So I can switch this to normally closed or normally open. Very handy. Same with triple pedal. Again, that's if you're fancy and you've spent $300 and you bought the triple pedal, this is where you set all that up. You also can adjust the rotor speed with a pedal. I don't like doing that because I'm using left foot for sustain, right foot for expression, and that would mean I'd have to take my foot off. But some people prefer that, so it's right there. You could set that for whatever you want that to be, open or closed. Foot switch, again, you can you can go up or down banks using this. That's where you set that, and that's it. Now, MIDI. MIDI is kind of complex. Local control on means basically when you hit the keyboard, you're making a sound. If it's off, it's only going to be triggered through an external MIDI thing. So again, not really something we're worried about. MIDI global channel, this just says when I'm sending stuff out, this is the channel I'm on. We're on channel 1. Organ channel, you can set individual channels for each individual part. So you could have, when the organ's engaged, it could only go out on 1 and then 2 and 3 and so on. So that's very handy. And then we can control some other stuff like, do I send control messages and receive them? Again, this is way above your pay grade and mine most of the time. And that's all our MIDI stuff. Then for external, this is basically sets a whole bunch of different preferences on if I'm using some sort of external device, like MainStage or a hardware synthesizer or something like that. And I can set the velocity, volume. I can send a program change message when I launch a particular patch. This is really handy. This is what I do if I'm using external gear. I can send a MIDI out, a MIDI CC1 out through here. I can also send the mod wheel MIDI out. Aftertouch, I can send my control pedal, my swell pedal if I wanted to, my volume pedal, and I can send it on load, meaning when I load the patch, it sends the value automatically. Again, not something you need unless you're doing an external thing, and that's a whole nother thing that we won't really touch on. Okay, so you made it this far. We've got just 2 sections left. I'll go real quickly here for you, or as quick as I can go. Synth section. Synth section is very complex. It's the most complex section of them all. I'm going to very quickly give you just the bullet points of what you need to know. Again, there's 3 different sounds that you can get here. Let's go ahead and switch to an empty patch. So I've got basically there's 2 kinds of synthesis here that you're using most of the time. There's actually several different kinds, which is really nice. The main modes are analog, where you're building a sound using synthesis, essentially like from the ground up, like raw waveforms. So like here we got a saw wave, a triangle wave, a square wave, and we're shaping it using oscillators, filters, LFOs, the whole 9 yards. That's the analog version. Samples take a recorded audio and put it in, map it across the keyboard, and that's how you generate it. So something that sounds like a string. And a lot of times you're trying to get a very realistic sound with this, but you're also potentially not you're also potentially not going to be doing a realistic sound with it. There's a lot of pads I've created, for instance, that take an audio file and kind of shape it. So you can blend those three sections together using any combination of samples or audio or analog. And then there's a third feature. I could set external if I wanted to. And if I hit external, that turns off the synth, but sends an external signal to something else. And that can be very helpful if you're using outboard gear. So we'll turn that off. So let's start off with just the basics. Again, I could hold shift, synth, and I could load in sounds if I wanted to in here. It's going to just automatically do it. Let's just bring up a simple pad here. I'm going to use one of Nord's because Nord's are a little more simple at times than mine. And I think this one's pretty straightforward. So right here, we just have a detuned saw wave. And then there's, you can basically click different buttons here along the bottom in order to see what each thing is controlled. So there's a envelope or an envelope, as the British say, I believe, where you can set how fast something starts, how long it takes to decay, and then how quickly it stops playing. So in this case, it starts here. It doesn't ever decay. I can hold it forever. Just kind of holds forever. And then when I release it, it takes 851 milliseconds to release. You can hear that come off. If I release that quicker, it comes off right away. Same with the attack. I could set it for very quick, and it comes in right away. Now, what each, again, I'm not trying to teach you like synthesis here, but it's good to know basics. So for instance, if I have a pad, and let's just say it has a super long release, and I'm like, oh man, that's just too long. I can come in, tap on amp, and then adjust the release. Let's do the same for the end. And maybe I don't like the fact it's attacking. There we go. There we go. It automatically sets it up. So that's super helpful to know. Each one of these has an envelope. They all work exactly the same way. They just control different things. Then the only other thing that I'll really cover here is your frequency. This is huge because it controls how much high end or low end gets passed through. So in this case, it's a low pass filter, meaning the low is passed through so you can hear the low first, and then as I open it up, it lets the high end in. And honestly, between the oscillator and a filter are the two things that essentially define the majority of what synthesis is. Like, I spend most of my time adjusting those two things. So if you adjust those things, you're going to have a huge control over your overall performance. So if I start a piano here and I have it all the way open, turn this here. The piano is kind of hard to hear, but if I adjust the filter back, a little better. Now I've got this nice pad that's kind of tamed back behind the piano. So that's the most important thing here. Samples, same exact process. You have all the same controls. You're just working with an audio waveform. Like that's obviously an accordion, and you can adjust it there. Now, that's all I'm going to talk about here. We've already talked about things like pitch range, about volume and changing the different sounds. You can combine them together. The only other thing that I'll point out is there's an arpeggiator up here that's super helpful. So I can take any sound and I can instantly turn it into like a movement, like a that sort of a sound, by just turning on the arpeggiator. It's this red button here. They put it down here so you can touch it easily, where instead of having to go all the way up here. It's a really cool move, but a little confusing. So if I turn it on, And I'm going to adjust that envelope to make it a little more plucky. Maybe I'll adjust the decay. There we go. And I can do all kinds of different things with this. I can set the range to be high. I can set the time. And in the Nord Stage 4, you can adjust so that it plays all the sounds at the same time. Or you can even adjust it to be a gate, so it turns on and off. That's almost like a slicer effect then. It's kind of cool. Most of the time you're going to want to just use the arpeggiator. To adjust this, each one of these menu buttons is going to let you adjust different menu things here. So I'm going to click menu, and I can adjust it going up or down, the whole 9 yards. I can also hold shift and adjust this to turn it so it syncs with the master tempo that we set over here. So if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. So now it's eighth notes. Let's turn that off, and we'll see here. If I hold down, if I'm adjusting my rate, you can see this moving here. So let's put it 16th. You hear it's stepping, whereas if I was just had this off, you can hear it's going just free there. So that's really handy. You can do that on each individual one, save it. Okay, we've made it all the way to the effects section. The effects section is really cool. Again, it has a lot of options. I'm not going to go into depth. Let's just basically take a piano, and I'm going to show you what it can do. So I've got my piano here, and nothing to write home about. To turn on individual sounds, it's essentially like a stomp box over here. You've got an on button that turns it on, and then you have an amount and a rate. This is an auto pan, and I can just adjust it here, make it subtle or less subtle. And to turn it off, I just press it again. And then there's a variation if I want to. I can hold down shift over here, hit the variation, and adjust. That's a little bit harder left-right pan, I think. Maybe more of a square shape. And that's how I adjust the variation on it. Very handy. Same true for each one of these. So I can touch any one of these. To change the kind, I just tap on this button here. There's some really cool effects. Maybe not for piano, but it's all there. And again, you can always just randomly touch these, and it's going to create some cool things for you. Let's go back over here to, I can turn on each one of these individually if I wanted to. Create total pandemonium. Then I've got an amp simulator down here, which acts as an EQ when there's no amp selected. And then turns into like an amp simulator here. Kind of fun. And you can also get distortion here. That's pretty metal. Delay. Right there. And then we've got compression. This basically squashes the sound. You might recognize that one. Again, you can always hold shift, and there's a second function here. So this one's fast. So, and it lights up when it's activated. See the little red button come on there. And then the last thing, and probably the most important of this effect, is the reverb. The reverb is really cool. You've got a variety. Got like a spring, a booth, kind of a room. And then we have bigger reverbs like stage, hall. And and then Cathedral, huge. Just lasts forever. Now, the cool thing about this is you can hold Shift and tap on the type button and it'll change to a choral button. And this creates like a modulation of some sort here. I'm not even sure if it's a chorus or a modulation or what the deal is, but it sounds so cool. And it's used on a lot of the worship collection. And it applies to every one. So the room sounds different. The stage has that kind of wobbly modulation tail. Same with hall. And that's just very handy to put on. And when you're done, you can save all of that as an individual sound if you want to. The way to do that is once you've got all your stuff set, you hold down Shift, you tap on the section you want to record. So like piano section, I'm going to hit piano here, and then I'm going to hit store. Then it's going to ask me where you want to store it to. I just scroll around until I find an open spot. It'll say empty, and then I hit store, and that'll save my preset. And that is how to use this keyboard and the worship collection. And if you have any questions, you get stuck on anything, I am happy to help you. You can email me at patchfoundry.com. And thanks so much.